All right, it's preparing to stream. We just make sure everything's hooked up. All right, we're on YouTube, so it's safe to call the meeting to order.
Okay, Laura Bauer, Board Vice President, calling the meeting to order, 9:02, October 21st, 2020. Do we take a roll?
Sure. Albany County, Bill Connors.
Here, Mark.
Lucy McKay's not able to join us. Oh, sorry. How's that? We good? Sounds to be okay. Kristen Swinton.
Present.
Rensselaer County, Laura Bauer and Scott Bendet are here. Saratoga County, Steve Bale and Craig Warner are here.
Present.
Schenectady County, Barbara Morrow and Samantha Miller Herrera is absent today. Still on maternity leave through the first of the year.
Okay, so we have a quorum. Item 2 on our agenda is the minutes from July 15th. Did everyone get the packet and have a chance to review the minutes?
Yes.
Are there any comments, concerns, questions on the minutes or revisions? Okay, motion to accept the minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. In favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, carries. Item 3 on our agenda is the financial statements, memo 20-19.
All right, I'm just going to take a moment to share my screen, if that's okay. And can everyone see my screen? Yes. Okay. All right, so we have since 2017, we've been sort of rejiggering our financial presentation. So what you're seeing today is going to be how we present the financials moving forward. The financials include a profit and loss budget performance report that helps us track how we're doing to budget, a profit and loss by class report, and the specialized secure detention and secure detention operations, which we have to track separately, are different classes, so we can see how the expenses discretely in those two categories, and then obviously a melded balance sheet that shows our actual bank balances. The year-to-date revenues reflect billings to the counties through the second quarter. Does not reflect any third quarter revenues at this point, as we are still waiting to finalize third quarter expenses. We can't, book those revenues until we finalize those expenses, report them to the state, and the state issues us a rate. So we're still waiting to do that. Berkshire operations expenses are actual through August and estimated for September for both SD and SSD. You'll note on the profit and loss by class, or the profit and loss to budget, the deficit amounts, and those deficits reflect not having booked third quarter revenues at this point. And it also imperfectly reflects the amount of advance Berkshire Farm is providing to the operation, because they have to wait for us to pay them. We have to wait to be reimbursed and all that kind of stuff. So SD, we're tracking at 70% to budget. Budget is 75% on the revenue side. Expenditures are about $1.7 million through the year for SD. SSD is tracking under budget at 57%. Again, PAR is 75, so we're tracking a little under there. It's going to be interesting to see how expenses for the SSD operation catch up in the third and fourth quarter with additional use in the SD side of things. Of note on the profit and loss, our repair and maintenance line is 45% over budget through the year, and that's primarily due to the fact that we had to replace a condenser on the facility's chiller before the summertime, and that's was an unanticipated expense. We will be providing the audit presentation at the next meeting, and once we accept the audit, we'll be able to disperse on the 2017-2018 reconciliation payments that we have been delaying. Any questions on the financials?
No.
Okay, we have a motion to accept.
I'll make a motion to accept.
Any
Second.
further discussion? And Barbara, you seconded, correct?
Yes.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Next item, I'm sorry?
One thing before we move off the topic, I just wanted to point out was these lines where Berkshire Farm is over budget, and that reflects what's going on inside the facility now, and the per diem line and the overtime line are significantly over through 3 quarters of the year. So that's the only other thing I wanted to point out.
Thank you, Mark. Next item, number 4, appointment of nominating committee.
So in accordance with the bylaws, a nominating committee needs to be appointed annually so that we have a slate of officers seated at our first meeting of the calendar year in January. The bylaws dictate that there's a rotation of officers. So the next slate of officers for CDYCI will include a president from Rensselaer County, a vice president from Saratoga County, a secretary from Schenectady County, and a treasurer from Albany County. So Lucy will be rotating off as president, and then we'll need a new Albany County representative to come in and serve as treasurer. While this is in the purview of the board and the nominating committee, typically the officers advance one step in the series. But the purpose of the nominating committee is just to make those phone calls to confirm those people want to move up or serve in those roles. So just a board action is requested for board members to volunteer, any one or more to volunteer to serve in the nominating committee to serve that role and that function. Don't all volunteer at once.
I'll volunteer.
Thanks, Laura.
Thank you.
How many do we need? 2? Did you say?
We don't need, we can go with 1 if that works.
Okay.
And I will forward you, Laura, the contact information for the officers and the other members.
Okay. All right. So, so do we need to then nominate me to the nominating committee, or how do we do this?
Well, I guess the board will take a vote to appoint you as the nominating committee.
Okay.
Make a motion to do that.
Second?
Sorry, who did that?
Me.
What were we voting on?
Okay, all in favor, Laura Bauer is the nominating committee.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'm sorry, I got Steve made the appointment. Who seconded it?
Warner.
Okay, Craig, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next item, number 5, bedroom project recap. It's your memo 2021.
So you may remember that we started the bedroom furniture replacement project back in 2019. We were ready to go for the installation project the week of March 15th, and we were shut down by the New York State pause. We were able to work with DASNY to get an additional amount of money approved by the New York State Division of Budget to cover additional costs associated with this project to be able to advance it and get the project completed in early October of this year. So as of now, new bedroom furniture has been installed in the facility. I'd like to thank Joe and the facility staff for facilitating that work with a very full population in the facility. The whole project took about a week, and we were under a variance issued by SDOC that required us to have additional staff, in the SSD operated wings until we replaced the bedroom furniture. So we got an email last night from the State Commission on Corrections, essentially negating that waiver and changing our maximum facility capacity, which was certified at 0 to 24. So, with the project completion, we're in good shape, and the waiver has been removed. Habitat showing a couple pictures of the very new and not very exciting bedroom furniture. Again, the bedroom furniture's purpose was to be anti-ligature, just to make sure the youth are safe in the bedrooms in the facility. Any questions on the bedroom project?
Glad it's finally done.
All right.
It was one of the only projects, raise the age projects in the state that was allowed to proceed.
Okay. Okay, any other comments, questions for Mark on that?
No.
All right, we'll move on to our item number 6, approval of internal controls memo. That's 20-22.
So with all of the changes that we've had to adjust to since 2017, including our billing and claiming and all this other stuff and how we track SD and SSD expenses and revenues separately, we've had to rejigger our processes for establishing a billable rate, developing bills that we send to the CDYCI counties, and then the processes by which we disperse revenues that are derived through the operations of the facility. So internal controls policies can take many different forms. The articulation here is just a very detailed step-by-step articulation, just so we're very transparent in how disbursements are made to Berkshire Farm and to CDYCI. The processes, the previous processes, again, had to change significantly. And these step-by-step processes, reflect the checks and balances that are in place in the steps and the reviews and checks that are inherent in the process. But it's presented here for your review and approval, just so you all know and our counties can know that we're doing what we can do to make sure that the majority of our financial operations related to operations is clear, transparent, and there's appropriate checks and balances.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve these?
So moved.
Any discussion? Is there a second?
Second,
Is that you, Scott?
yes.
Okay.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, carries. Next item, number 7, secure detention, specialized secure detention recertification.
Thankfully, we were able to secure the recertification for the operations of secure detention, specialized secure detention. I will also like to recognize Joe Mancini, because that was something I threw at him his first week on the job. And he was like, yeah, I'll take care of it. So he was able to turn that around, and we were able to get, before those certifications expired at the end of September, those recertifications. So we're good to go for another couple years with those certifications.
Thank you. Any questions on that? Okay, our item number 8, raise the age plan for 2020-21.
The state has still not provided an update on the process or the timeline for approving the 2020-2021 Raise the Age plans, which means we are still in a situation where we don't have a timeline when we can get some of the expenses that we may anticipate to incur in 2021 approved for reimbursement by the state. Concurrently, we're still in the process of trying to finalize the approval of the costs that were incurred back in 2020, back in 2018 into the 2018-2019 Raise the Age plan. Still, there's no update on the timeline for that as well. Thankfully, the bedroom project was approved by Division of Budget and OCFS as a Raise the Age project, and it is reimbursable under the Raise the Age plan.
Thank you, Mark. Any questions, discussion on that? Okay, thank you. We'll move down to item number 9, facility usage. That's in your memo 20-23.
So we're at historic highs in the facility. Over the summer, we flipped the male wings. So we're now operating the 13-bed wing as the wing for AOs, which, as we learned yesterday, is still not enough capacity. So I've attached some tables that just try to visually communicate how the facility has been used and who it's been used by. So the third quarter, a lot of use from Albany County and the 4 counties. The facility right now is almost exclusively outside of, I think, 1 female being used by the 4 CDYCI counties. It's also interesting to take a look at the third quarter, the calendar year trend. And you can see the blue line represents SD, so that's JDs and JOs, and the orange line represents AOs. And you can see the AOs are on a steady trend upwards, which reflects the demand in our facility that we're seeing. It's also interesting to take a look at the longer term trend lines, looking back to the implementation of Raise the Age. And when you look at that time frame, you can clearly see an upward trend on both the JDs and JOs and the AO population, with obviously more significant increase to the AO population. At this point, there are more AOs in the facility than there are JDs and JOs. And that looks to be a continuing trend. Any questions specifically on the population? All right, I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
All right. We don't need any board action on that. Let's go to item 10, facility operation.
So I'll give a little intro and then turn it over to Luke and Joe to give an update and to sort of foreshadow some operational improvements that they will be proposing to make in the facility. And I'll start by talking about what happened yesterday, which is unprecedented. So Albany County, the Albany Police Department arrested 2 teenagers for attempted murder. Our facility did not have any AO beds available. And this is even after utilizing the 13-bed wing. So we started a process that's governed by the intermunicipal agreement between the counties to move out some youth from a county that may be over its reserved bed total to allow those youth from Albany County to come in. Albany County at that point was using 5 of its reserved, of its 7.5 reserved AO beds, and Rensselaer County, according to our initial analysis, was using 4 of its reserved 2 AO beds. So I called Phil, who works for Laura Bauer in Rensselaer County Probation, to alert him of the situation. Joe Mancini was able to identify 2 beds in Monroe County that could house those youth from Rensselaer County. So we were working to make sure that we were able to, play the shell game to allow those Albany County youth to come in. In the afternoon and subsequent to sort of setting these plans in place, Joe was informed by Monroe County that those 2 beds were no longer available. That meant that we had to find 2 additional beds for the youth. And I will also remind everyone that the responsibility to find accommodations for youth that are arrested are with the local agency that makes the arrest. So, again, we're trying to be customer service oriented to try to help these agencies figure out where to place their youth. And I appreciate Joe's effort on that tremendously. But we came to realize that there were no beds available in the entire upstate area yesterday afternoon for AOs. So we quickly coordinated, and Joe set up a conference call with Nina Aldort, the Deputy Commissioner of OCFS, to talk about our options. The youth that were arrested by the Albany Police Department had been sitting in family court lockup since 3 a.m. on 3 a.m. on Monday or 3 a.m. Tuesday morning. So they really did not want the youth to stay there any longer. So in order to accommodate those youth and having 2 vacancies in the JD-JO wing, we submitted a waiver request to OCFS to commingle the JDs and AOs to be able to accept the 2 AO youths who were accused of attempted murder into the facility. That waiver request was granted last night. The facility took in the 2 AO youths, and they're currently being housed in the facility. That waiver is good until Monday. So we have until Monday to figure out alternative solutions to house the youth appropriately and safely. The current situation gives me a great deal of anxiety. It's not a sustainable situation. It's a temporary and emergency situation. And it really should. What happened yesterday, people had been pointing to since the advent of Raise the Age. But we're at a situation where the capacity in the system is tapped out, and there's literally nowhere to send a youth right now who may be arrested for a serious and violent charge. And so this is my editorial. So relying on, judges to make the right call, or saying that, we should not have any JDs or JOs in the facility, and, only AOs should be in the facility. That's not our call, But what was demonstrated yesterday is that there's clearly right now not enough capacity in the system, and there are 0 alternatives, 0 workable alternatives that we could rely on as to be an adequate or sane institutional approach to providing secure detention for youth accused of violent crimes in the state of New York.
Around here.
So that's an update, clearly an unprecedented situation for us. And I'd just like to again thank Joe and Dell at the facility to figuring out a way to safely accommodate those 2 youths yesterday for the Albany Police Department. We'll still be continuing to work to figure out how to shuffle the deck to make sure that we can
I had moved those. Those are all.
get back to some sense of normalcy by Monday.
Right there. They're on this chair.
Mark, thank you, Joe, too. Difficult,
It's okay.
to say the least.
Yes, thank you, Joe.
So that's a sort of a precursor to what Joe and Luke are going to talk about. Over the course of the past several months, I mentioned we increased capacity for AOs. We all have read in the paper the violence on the streets, the gang-related violence, and that violence has permeated its way into the facility, creating safety issues for youth and staff in the facility. There are numerous Berkshire employees right now who are out on workman's comp, resulting from injuries from diffusing situations among youth. The current staffing levels in the facility are inadequate to ensure the safety of both youth and staff in the facility. And so, with that as sort of the context, I just wanted to turn it over to Luke and Joe to provide the update of the facility operations, and also talk about some of the plans that they're thinking about to increase some staffing to ensure some additional safety in the facility.
Thank you very much, Mark. Joe, do you want to talk about the current state of the facility, and then I can talk a little bit about the staffing plans for next year?
Sure. So since what I've been seeing since I came here and flipping the JD and AO units, we're now running at 13 AOs constantly. We're just kind of seeing, and now we have OCFS has visited, and they're really looking at our practices. It's kind of like an irony that they'll give us the youth that can't be maintained in other detention centers, but then on the other hand say we're too strict. So we're trying to find that balance. Right now, our staff has been trained in our current model. It's going to be a challenge. When we have restraints, that takes our entire staff. We have reports to do, we have our compliance. We're pulling everything together to get that done. And there's a lot of oversight now, and we have the same infrastructure we've had since we created a facility. So we're responding to that. All the trainings and all those administrative and outside agency requests, trying to manage the day-to-day. Our supervisors, they are doing the direct work. There's not a whole lot of space. Our staff are really getting concerned that these youth are larger, they're more streetwise, they're more manipulative. They have some genuine fear and concern. We had that happen in one of our classrooms. An assault happened with the AOs. 2 big kids. One of the teachers really broke down, had a real hard time. Another teacher's aide said she's not going to come back. It was a fight. It was an assault. We handled it. Nobody got hurt. But there's that intimidation, I kind of feel that we have some seasoned staff saying, we're concerned because we have to have, a mix of staff. We hire them, but they don't all have that physical capacity to effect a restraint. We have to work with what we have. We're looking at that. We're doing the training, but sometimes with these bigger kids, all of our staff are not able to effect a physical restraint. That on top of OCFS is now telling us beginning next July, we can no longer do prone restraints, and we can no longer immediately use spit hoods. We haven't had to use those, and we'll figure that out. But the overall right now is the training that we get. Now OCFS, the workers there go to an academy for 3 months before they're put out on the floor. We're hiring staff, training them, and they're doing remarkably well. We want to look at the AOs. They're longer lengths of stay. They're here now for many, many months, so they're not moving. So we got to look at our AO unit and our AO programming overall. There's a lot, I'm in agreement with OCFS that we need to do, but we are just not equipped to do the activities they want to see happening. They want to see more behavior change happening, more engagement, because that structure isn't workable for youth this age and this length of time. They should have later bedtimes, they're telling us. There's a lot of activities they'd like to see happening here, almost like it was a placement facility. But we have not had that kind of model. We haven't done that. So Luke and I, Mark, we've had conversations looking at what do you think, what's a good balance we can find? Because the other thing is the mix of the population we have. We want to always honor our commitments and agreements with the counties, but sometimes uptown, downtown youth, that mix is too dangerous for our staff to handle. We want to make that call, and we're always going to work to see if we can find other alternatives. The other detention centers have been open to switching youth. We have done that a couple of times. But there's just a lot of dynamics going on that we're trying to, what's the staffing we would use, we need, and being fiscally responsible at the same time. And I think that's our challenge right now. And I'm really pleased with the staff that we've managed this as well as we do. Coming from when I saw what OCFS, when they made the shift, there were a lot of calls to Justice Center. You hold a youth accountable. They call the Justice Center. They call the ombudsman. Then there's another investigation. We drop everything, respond to the investigation. They had an increased amount of staff injured when they went from the real compliance model to engagement model. So trying to figure out what's a good balance that will work. We're not there yet. We have a long way to go. But I think we're looking at what is a good model? What do we need? Are there outside folks we could bring in to help us do some programming, vocational programming, whatever? I think those are things we want to start to look at. But right now is just getting that staffing and getting the training to start to look at a more engagement model. But first, the safety is right now, the move away from that right now would really, my concern would be the safety of the staff and the youth. So we need to get it and get the staffing that we would need to have the staff feel safe. We've had an increase in call outs. We've heard this consistently from the staff that they're concerned for their safety, that these big youth, that if they decided they want to take over the place, they would be able to do that. So again, that's something that we're working on, and Luke can take it from there as we're going to look at our staffing and kind of make some additional requests on what would be a fiscally responsible plan. We're looking at our CERT team. Right now, our CERT team is existing staff. Maybe you have a CERT team dedicated to just that role where they respond to the crises that are happening in the facility.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. And one of the unintended consequences of flipping the pods so we could have more AOs is that our AO population requires a higher level of supervision just by regulation, not only because of their needs, but by regulation. So we were already down staff when we made that flip, just by virtue of having to have more on every day with that larger population. So we're going to be looking at having at least 3 staff more than we have now per shift, which will allow us to staff the AO wing appropriately. And also, as Joe said, our rapid response team, because when we do have issues, we need to respond quickly. If we're not able to respond quickly, they quickly escalate into multiple youth getting into conflicts, and that's when our staff are getting hurt. But if we have somebody who's on a rapid response team who can get in immediately and they're there every shift, that's going to be able to de-escalate situations much faster. And as Joe noted, that as of July, we're no longer allowed to use prone restraints, and we cannot use what's called the spit sock hood to prevent youth from spitting. We need to de-escalate situations much faster than we have up until now. And so we're going to be looking at least 3 extra staff per shift. And Joe is working on what that staffing plan will look like, so we'll be able to show it to you in our budget. And we're also, we've had some difficulty in the past hiring staff, but we are an aggressive recruiting campaign. We currently have 6 openings for full-time staff. And I think, Joe, correct me if I'm wrong, we have 4 staff in the background process. So we will be almost completely staffed by the end of the year. So getting new staff with our commitment from our human resources department, we should be able to get them on very quickly and get back to where we need to. Our biggest goal is to provide some new programming in that facility. And without the staff, our staff are stuck maintaining security, not able to do any of that programming moving forward. So if we can get the appropriate staff on, I think we're really going to see us be able to do some initiatives with programming, which is something that we have not done there previously. We've concentrated on security and safety, and we need to put in some programming so we can help these youth when they leave the facility to not come back to our facility. So that is our goal moving forward. So those are some things we're putting in place. And Joe has some great ideas that he brings from OCFS and some reentry ideas and vocational ideas that we're going to be using moving forward. But we are going to be putting in a request for multiple new staff. And I just wanted to not shock when you see some of the increases in the budget that we're going to be proposing. And we'll get that out as soon as possible to everybody to be able to see, and our rationalization for doing it too.
Thanks for that summary, Luke. And I just want to also point out, while we don't need to get into specifics, Joe has been meeting frequently with the union representatives that represent the staff in the facility. So that's another contextual piece of this. Obviously, the union folks are advocating for the safety of their represented members. You know, I think one thing that I think Joe and Luke alluded to is that there's maybe not directly, but there seems to be a disconnect with where OCFS is at in terms of looking at the aspirational things about secure detention and where we need to be going, rather than dealing with the immediate crisis that is in front of us. You know, the immediate crisis about, you know, facilities that are full across the state, you know, ensuring that staff who don't have 3 months of academy training, you know, have the tools that they need to protect themselves, that they have at their disposal, you know, the kinds of restraints and tools that they've been able to use to make sure that they can control youth in situations in the facility. You know, concurrent with the current crisis, we're seeing, you know, on a pathway to remove some of those tools. So it's very concerning for me, but I'd just like to thank Luke and Joe for coming up and establishing a thoughtful process to make sure that the staffing plan at the facility reflects the safety needs that are required and incumbent upon us to deploy to respond to the crisis. Any questions? So we'll keep you all updated on changes at the facility. Again, the waiver for commingling youth is only good until Monday. There's a lot of hoping that capacity will open up somewhere. And that's not at all guaranteed. I will also point out that I think I only saw 1 or 2 AOs in the facility right now that actually have a court date. So the legal process to move these youth through, trial, and I understand that they're entitled to adequate representation, and they're charged with serious crimes, and those trials take a lot longer to produce. But they're staying a lot longer in the facility, and that's impacting our ability to turn over and have bed space available. And you're seeing that through the entire system at this point. There doesn't appear to be any urgency on OCFS and others to find creative solutions to be able to deal with the crisis of bed availability. We hear that they keep continuing to bang the drum that, well, judges shouldn't be sending JDs and JOs to secure detention. Well, you don't need to tell us that. We're not the judges, and we're not going to tell judges how to adjudicate their cases. We have youth in the facility that may be JDs and JOs that are in there, may be in there for longer lengths of stay, that relate more to their own safety than the crimes that they've committed. There are many things that are involved in the youth that get placed in the facility. One of the frustrations and people point to is that we have OCFS facilities that are proximate and around the state that we can't access in emergency situations. OCFS facilities are those places where youth are sent after they're sentenced. But that's something that's not on the table right now. So, I'm not sure, if there's an adequate way to have a reasonable conversation, that until we, build more bed capacity, that some of these alternative situations should be considered. If, changes to the law need to happen to allow some sort of temporary accommodations in those places, that needs to happen. That could be something that we consider advocating for. But, I think the overarching concern of OCFS is not to create too much bed space. Maybe clouding their ability to view the crisis and adequate remedies to deal with it at this point, which is my editorial on the situation. So I've had conversations with the sheriff's office to see, if the Sheriff's Association is planning on doing any advocacy in this regard or what have you. But, more to come, and, we'll deal with these crises as they come. So again, thanks to Joe and Luke for their work on this.
Yeah, thank you, Luke, Joe, Mark. Yeah, I mean, we are an unprecedented crime uptick, right? So, basing our model, and OCFS certainly has a goal to keep kids out of detention and back home. But I mean, as you're seeing from the kids that you're dealing with, a lot of them are pretty dangerous. So it's something they really should take a look at. But okay.
Can I just jump in with something? It might be a good idea to keep the local legislators and the chairs of the legislative committees that pass the laws that create and maintain and affect facilities like ours, and the whole situation of raise the age. They have to, the legislature does have an oversight role, as to how the laws it passes are being carried out. So it's not too soon to, fill stack the committee chairs of the committees that passed the legislation. The speaker, the majority leader in the Senate, they have to know these. They just have to be kept aware.
Right, that's a good point. It might be time for a briefing to give them an update on where we are. I've also been in regular communication with the district offices, the 3rd district and the 4th district, just so that those executives are aware and can communicate to the judges the capacity issue that we're having. It doesn't, I
Right.
always make it clear, I'm not trying to tell a judge what to do, just want to make sure that they're aware of what the situation looks like on the ground.
Well,
Thanks,
can I
Mark.
just ask Luke and Joe, the kids that are in there that aren't causing any trouble, the younger kids, are they afraid, or what's going on there?
They're in a smaller unit. And we haven't had the assaults that we've had with the AOs. So so they're working, and that's kind of the model we designed for that younger group. The older have a different set of challenges, and keeping them here as long as they are, there's not a whole lot of activities that we can offer for that long period of time. And we've had the JOs, but the younger ones we've been managing in the classroom, we've been managing those because it is a smaller unit of
But they're
8
separated
to
at
13.
all
Yes,
times.
and they're separated. They're in separate programming. Yes.
I mean, for meals, for classroom. It's all,
Yes. Yep.
please.
Yep.
Everything.
Okay.
Until there's variance. So we'll see
Well, see,
how
that's
that
why
works.
I don't.
Well, they'll still be separated in terms of programming, right?
Right.
They'll just be housed in the housing unit for the younger youth.
Yes.
Okay, any other discussion? Any other business? Okay, I believe our next meeting then is December 16th at 9 a.m. via Zoom. Motion to adjourn,
Motion to,
second.
second.
All right, in favor?
Aye.
Bye.
Opposed? All right, thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Laura. Thanks, Mark.
I will be in touch with